8:59 at Radio Free America. This is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock America. Another day closer to football. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
And welcome everybody to our Daily Gun Show. I'm going to mute Rudy here for a second. Welcome to our, well, it's not really our Daily Gun Show. This is a Minuteman University episode. We are efforting to interview as many Second Amendment advocates as we can. And we have today with us Yehuda Remer, who is also known as the Pew Pew Jew. We've talked to Yehuda a couple of times in other chats, but this time is an opportunity for Yehuda to talk about his projects and why he's doing what he's doing, how he does what he does. We're doing this live on gunchannels.com, a community we built almost 6 years ago now, a place for conversations like this one. We're hosting this on our YouTube channel, Gun Website's YouTube channel. That happens to be our largest soapbox. So we're following the text messages or the text conversation from the people on both sides of our conversation. I suppose since I'm my phone's sitting here, I'll get it on Instagram Live as well. But what we're trying to do is give Second Amendment advocates an opportunity to talk for an hour about what they're doing, why they're doing it, and how they're doing it. And I guess I've already said that. We're talking to Yehuda Remer tonight, who I met, I think, for the first time 2 years ago in Dallas at the AmCon. And then, of course, this last year at AmCon in Chicago, and been following his efforts with books and with other things and talking and being an advocate. So we're going to let him talk about what he's doing. And I run this show sort of like some of my three favorite podcasts out there: Gun Freedom Radio, the Riding Shotgun with Charlie, and the James Cleta, the James Cleta's podcast. James Cleta's basically just introduces someone, lets them talk. He does it for 20 minutes. Riding Shotgun with Charlie, same thing. He just brings people on, they drive around, they talk about their projects and what they're doing. And Gun Freedom Radio is one of my favorite podcasts. They do the same thing. My only complaint is they don't give people enough time. So I'm going to shut up and I'm going to let you to have an hour to tell us about what he's doing. We'll talk about why he's doing it and then how he's doing it. Yehuda, thanks for joining us. Oh, I muted you before. So up at the top of the screen, when you hover over the middle of the screen, there's like a couple of buttons that'll open up. You can unmute there. And then once you've that, yep, there you go. You can always mute that, or you can toggle that mute with your space bar too, FYI.
Oh, cool.
So welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. And I know you've had some stuff to do today, so thanks for the people that stuck with us here. We kind of started a little bit late, but that's my fault for kind of throwing this at you at the last minute. But thanks for taking the time to join us today.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. If you hear me talking a little weird, half my mouth is still numb from a 2.5 hour dentist appointment. So I apologize if I sound slurry.
Oh, okay, yeah, you sound great. Yeah, and to answer your question, yeah, you did have the camera on. We are video. I run this like a podcast though, so audio mostly. I'll cheat and screen capture some of your websites and stuff as we're talking, but feel free to turn the camera on or leave it off either way.
All right, cool.
So again, thanks for joining us and tell us about what you're doing.
Yeah, so I'm an author. I started off writing a children's book called Safety On. It's an introduction to the world of firearms for children. That kind of propelled me into the firearms industry without knowing anything about the firearms industry. And it's just been a fantastic ride for the last 2 years since my first book came out.
So what spurred the book? I guess you weren't already whatever people would consider a gun owner.
Well, I was a gun owner when I started writing the book, but that's what actually prompted me to write it. I was married, out of the house. I had 2 kids, and I decided to keep the fact that I owned a bunch of guns from my parents just because I didn't need that Jewish mother's guilt hanging over my head. So one day we were by my parents, and my younger brother kind of let slip that I owned a Glock, and my parents went nuts. And from there, I decided, I'm like, they're calling me irresponsible, but how do I, as a firearms owner, how can I be as responsible as possible with, having two little children in the house? And from there, I did a ton of research, and I was shocked to find that there really was no books on the market for children discussing firearm safety. And what I mean by that is there are books out there for parents to talk to children, but nothing actually for children themselves to read. So I set out, wrote the book. It was a heartache project. I was turned down by over 30 publishing companies, turned down by over 30 literary agents. Just, kept getting kicked to the ground. But after 5 years of trying and 5 years of really pushing myself, I got it published in January of 2016.
And I guess one of my questions was going to be for you. It sounds like then you weren't already an established writer/publisher, and this was just a new project to tackle. This was a new project in many ways.
Oh yeah, I always enjoyed creative writing. Excuse me, I always enjoyed creative writing, but I never actually thought I'd become a published author. And the whole process of writing this book, the only thing that kept going through my head was, why am I even doing this? There's no way I will ever become published. And lo and behold, after 5 long years and countless heartaches, heartbreaks, and blood, sweat, and tears, my first book was published.
All right, so it sounds like you originally were just a regular then gun owner with kids. It's just that, like a lot of people, you had family, I guess, opinions of guns that are varied, and so this was more of an internal, as opposed to like looking at it as someone who was maybe, I don't know, studying libraries or youth programs or, I don't know, writing or something, and then saw that there was this gap. This was something that you created as a individual project. Was it something that you were just writing for your own kids, or was it initially you were writing it as a book to be published and be useful for everybody?
Well, initially it was, to write it so that my children would have something to read, but it quickly turned into, oh my God, there's nothing like this on the market. As a very proud capitalist, I was like, look, on one hand, there's nothing like this on the market, and it's something that needs to be on the market with the attack on the Second Amendment coming from all sides. But it also turned into, wait, this can actually, be a lucrative opportunity for me to grab a niche in a industry that no one is touching really. So I decided to write the book, hoping to make some money. But also, I mean, first and foremost, I want to make sure that children are safe, children are educated, and they know not to touch firearms when it's supposed to be, all the range rules. I mean, it's just important stuff for people to know. So that's kind of a mixture of both, I guess you can say.
Sure. So you saw that there was a potential need or a gap for something like this, and then you created something. When you talk about the going through publishers and time, trying to find someone who shared the concept or the idea, the possibility there, did the book change at all, or did it develop, or was it the book and did the same book go to each publisher?
No, everything was the same. The only things that really changed were, I had a good buddy of mine who is in the Los Angeles Police Department, and he basically like tore the book to shreds. I gave it to him, and he gave me constructive criticism and really narrowed it down. But to the most part, once the project was done, I was terrified to actually put the book on the market. But between my buddy and the LAPD, I got Alan West's endorsement. I had a connection to him. I got Alan West's endorsement. Gunsight Academy decided to sell my book. So it was one of those things that it was just, I knew I did it right. There was no need to change anything. There were a couple of people who gave me some grief over certain things, but it was just nitpicking and really not worth even dealing with people like that, because like for example, on page 1, you see a father and son holding hands on the street, and the son is standing on the gun side where the firearm's holstered, and someone actually left me a negative review on Amazon because of that, saying no one would ever carry like that because it's tactically not sound. And first off, I know plenty of people who still will hold their child's hand
while carrying
on that side. But not even that. The book is not a tactical book. It's not. I'm not writing a book on how to defend your child in case you are walking down the block and someone opens fire. That's not what the goal was.
And it's not situational awareness for children either. It's safety for firearms.
Exactly. So, you had small things like that. One thing, on one of the pages, they talk about, how my dad owns a bunch of guns, and, he has big ones, small ones, black ones, green ones, and we even have a pink one for my mom. And I had a few women in the industry who were like, no one really carries pink guns, or not a lot of women are carrying pink guns. It's more of a gimmick. And when I explained to them that the reason why I wrote it like that is because guns do come in different colors, and you can tell your kid that, mom and dad only carry black guns, but a pink gun can look like a toy gun. And you want children to understand that even toy guns need to be treated with respect and take all the safety protocols taken. So when I explained that to some of these ladies who I've since become very close with, and they're big allies of mine with my books, they're like, okay, that actually makes perfect sense, and they were totally fine with it.
That's good to hear. So you basically, I'm guessing, kind of wrap around the whatever 4 safety rules, and with some of the preview books or pictures here, you can see that it's designed for either a kid to read or be read with the parents, right?
Exactly. And one of the other unique aspects of the book is that the book is told through the eyes of the little boy. His name's Kyle, and the reason why I did that is because I wanted it to be more of a peer-to-peer conversation with other kids, rather than an adult telling a kid, don't touch this, don't do this, keep your finger off the trigger. It's more like, my dad taught me, my dad told me. So it's more of a child talking to a child versus an adult preaching to a child.
Just orders. Yeah, it empowers the kid to know that he's part of the safety, and he's part of the conversation with other people, to let them know about it.
Right
on. So without getting into minutia of what it might be like, the difficulties of publishing and stuff, let's move ahead to when it's published, and it's like you say, you've got some presence out there and people are starting to discover it. From listening to your story and talking to you in the past, it sounds like at that point is when you kind of hit the scene and you had the opportunity to become more of a two-way activist, and where a lot of people would have decided, okay, I've done my thing and I'm moving on, or I'm gonna bow out, or I've accomplished what I was trying to do. You continued.
Yeah, I converted the book Safety On to a coloring book so that once the child has read the book, they can really immerse themselves into the story and visualize it themselves. And then I've come out with the ABCs of guns, a third book on firearms education. I have a fourth book coming out, God willing, in about 6 weeks, which I'm almost ready to talk about, but not yet. And then a fifth book coming out September time.
Right on. So I'm assuming once you've got some of the stuff down, it's easier to do subsequent books?
Yeah, I mean, you still have to come up with you still have to have a solid idea, and it's not just a matter of getting one down, then it's easy to come up with. You still have to you have to have that solid idea to continue. And luckily, within the firearms educational world, there really is a lot of things out there that you can write about. So, I have a lot of plans. I have a lot of plans with upcoming books and stuff like that. But it's just an idea will pop into my head, and then I'm like, "Ooh, let's write about that." But it's much easier said than done. Coming up with ideas is one thing. Writing the book, raising the funds, and getting it made is a completely different thing. So I luckily I had 2 sponsors for my new book coming out in 6 weeks, who were beyond generous in helping me get the book made. So there's a lot that goes into publishing a book.
I'm going to go to the chats out there. We've got a couple of questions coming in, one from David on the gun channel side. Did your parents ever come around? They thinking guns were okay, or?
Yes, they have. So they're still not, they're still not like completely thrilled. My father tends to be a lot better about it than my mom is. My father has really, I hate to use the word seen the light, but yes, seen the light, and really values the Second Amendment right now and understands why. My mom also, but I think my mom is still very hesitant when it comes to me carrying the firearm, around with the kids and stuff like that.
New concept and everything. It's only still a few years for her. She's had a lifetime of, not being comfortable with that, right?
Right.
Another question from David on the gun channel side to follow up with that one is, are your kids into guns, or are they now just aware of safety?
So they're all I have 3 kids, a 9, a 7, and a 3-year-old. They're all into guns. My 9-year-old actually goes shooting with me. He absolutely loves it. My daughter enjoys firearms, but she hasn't gone shooting yet just because she is still very hesitant when it comes to the loud noises and stuff like that. It kind of scares her still. So I'm not pushing her. As soon as she is ready, I'm more than happy to take her. And then my 3-year-old is 3 years old, and he just walks around saying pew pew and shooting us all with a Nerf gun, and we tell him to keep his finger off the trigger. But he's 3, so in one ear out the other. But it's a long process. But you start them young, so you don't have anything to worry about by the time they're 7, 8, 9 years old.
Adam on the YouTube side had asked your biggest hurdle so far.
Oh God, my biggest hurdle. I don't know. My biggest hurdle would be getting a book that is pro-gun and pro-child made in the aftermath of Sandy Hook is when I really finished the book and started shopping it around. That was a huge hurdle.
And now that's something that you couldn't have anticipated, and I mean that's the kind of thing that gets thrown at you, I imagine, to challenge to really test your faith in whether or not to pursue it, because that's got to be, I can't imagine putting a bunch of effort into something and then having it ready to go and then have something like that hit the news.
Yeah, that was definitely a big hurdle, but honestly, I would say the biggest hurdle is, and I know this might sound a little cliche, but I would say the biggest hurdle would probably be believing in myself, knowing it took a while to actually convince myself that I actually could become a published author. But one thing that really helped was I'd written the book. I didn't get it illustrated yet, but are you familiar with Andrew Klavan?
Not by name, but maybe by his work.
So Andrew Klavan is one of the big three guys at the Daily Wire with Ben Shapiro. He's written tons and tons of books, got like 17, 18 books. Two of his books were made into movies. One with Clint Eastwood. He's a big name. Staunch conservative. And I used to work with him because I used to write for Ben Shapiro. And I approach Andrew. I'm like, hey, Andrew, I have this book. Would you mind taking a look at it? He's like, look, I'll take a look at it. But 99.9% of all people who send me manuscripts, I shoot them down because, in his words, they're pure crap. So I was like, well, I'm willing to take that risk. And luckily, because he's an author as well, he was really able to envision what my book could be. And he came back to me saying, you must get this book made. He goes, it's not even an option. You have no other choice but to get this book made because it is something that needs to be on the market. And when someone like Andrew Klavan is telling you that, that kind of was a big ego boost. So
it's more than just like your wife or your friend.
Exactly. It's not my wife or my parents rooting me on, saying, "Oh, you can do it. We know you can." Like we're talking about, this is a like I said, two of his books were made into movies. One with Clint Eastwood. He's a real deal author. So that was a big thing. But I would say the biggest hurdle was just believing in myself and really thinking that, you can do it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's something that we're going to hopefully talk about too is, you kind of addressed it right there, but one of the questions I like to ask advocates, or I guess Second Amendment advocates, whatever we're calling them, what keeps you going or what motivates you? We don't have to dig into that one just yet, or we could dig into it whenever you want, but we are having a conversation, so people out there want to ask questions. Artisan Tony from Chattanooga asked a pretty interesting one, and I suppose since you go with the moniker Pew Pew Jew and you don't shy away from your religion, I'm assuming that most people are going to put you in the role of having to speak for all Jews, right? And then you have to speak for all Jews that aren't even gun owners sometimes. Is that something that you knew was coming? You didn't, I had to be aware, but is it something you anticipated to the level or am I wrong and it's not as big an issue?
No, I don't anticipate to be speaking for all Jews. That was never my intention. I don't plan on being a spokesperson for all Jews unless God decides to appoint me the next leader of the Jewish people. But, what my goal is unfortunately, Jews have a very bad rep in the country as being rabidly anti-gun. The reason is you have a lot of members of our glorious government who are probably the biggest gun grabbers, who are Jewish. You know, you have Schumer, you have Feinstein, Bloomberg, Rahm Emanuel, Blumenthal. I mean, they're all Jews in name only, or Jews in ethnicity only. They don't actually, to my knowledge, really practice. I could be wrong about that, but my goal is to show America that not all Jews are anti-gun. Not all Jews are anti the Second Amendment. Some of us really do believe in it. Like I always say, never again means nothing if you're not willing to do something about it. And we're coming off the Holocaust 70 years ago. And, you know, if you want to be anti-gun, by all means, that's your right. But don't take away my ability to defend myself. And that's something that I really push for, is vocal Jewish gun ownership. You know, unfortunately, we had another shooting at a synagogue over the weekend. One woman was killed, and it's unfortunate. It's incredibly unfortunate, and that's why I do what I do. I want people to be, what's a good? I guess I want people to be inspired by my being out there as an Orthodox Jew, talking about firearms ownership, talking about the importance of it, talking about, you know, that gun, as I like to say, gun control is not kosher. So, you know, that's something that I push very hard for. So I don't necessarily want to be the spokesperson for all Judaism, but I'm just going to keep on doing my thing. And if I can inspire people Jews to get to the range and maybe look at firearms ownership in a different light, then I'm accomplishing my goal.
There it is. I was looking for the picture. So a question, I guess, is maybe a follow-up is, have you had any negative feedback from synagogues or yours or other synagogues?
No, luckily, yeah, there it is. Luckily, my synagogue is incredibly supportive. My rabbi knows that I carry. A lot of the members know that I carry. And I've become the resident gun guy in my synagogue, answering questions. I've taken members shooting. I've had events at my house talking about firearms ownership with the executive director of a Girl and a Gun. So, you know, yeah, you know, I haven't really had that much negative feedback. On occasion, I'll have some either Jewish person tell me, you know, they're rapidly anti-gun. They can't believe I'm so pro-gun. We should have more gun control. And I just try to explain to them my opinion, and sometimes I listen, sometimes not. I do have, though, however, being somewhat of a public figure, I do have people telling me on Instagram and stuff like that, you know, Hitler didn't finish the job and I should have been shoved in the ovens with my relatives. So I you know, you do get your hate putting yourself in this position, but luckily I have a pretty awesome following on Instagram where I get a lot of the hate. Pretty awesome following on Instagram who just rush to my defense and, you know, roast whoever says like these anti-Semitic things. So you get your hate. You know, that's definitely out there.
And it's the public or anonymous forums will allow that, I suppose. And but on the other hand, I would assume you're a figure for someone who's got a sober, rational perspective on pro-gun that maybe, you know, is a voice that's, I don't know, familiar to other people, or you can offer some perspective from an angle that they're not used to. So however much negative there is, the positive is out there as well.
Yeah.
And it's not few people will, you know, see something, be inspired or encouraged by it, or, you know, get something positive out of it and then leave a comment to tell you about it, where the trolls and the negative stuff their whole goal is to leave comments. So that can be a little
right.
Okay, so you can see Tundra Tactical is out there. That's a friend of yours.
Yeah, Tundra Tactical has also a YouTube channel. He and I became super close um, at SHOT Show this year. And we've just remained super tight friends, and he is a fantastic guy. He's got a great, I know this is your channel right now, but he has a great YouTube channel called Tundra Tactical. He does a show every Saturday night. It's a very rowdy, fun show. So we like to troll each other, and I think a couple of weeks ago he was doing a live show, and I texted him that he had a booger hanging out of his nose as he was doing the live show, and he just totally got thrown off. So we have a good time messing with each other and really, just messing with each other and trolling each other.
Phone's falling all over the place here for Instagram. So John is saying on the Instagram side, a lot of that hate comes from Democrat voters brainwashed by the leftist communist. Well, a lot of connotation there, but I imagine a lot of that's true, right? If you're not aware and you're only fed info that's totally agenda based, it's all you're going to have to go off of.
Yeah, look, the hate that I get, I don't know where they stand politically. Usually they are hiding behind, weird Instagram handles.
So next, I'd like to focus a bit on the why. So, it wasn't something that was obvious. It wasn't something that it's from your story. It doesn't sound like writing books or getting involved as a Second Amendment advocate was a no-brainer or an easy decision or just another project that you were doing. So what was can you talk a bit about motivation? Try to leave this one intentionally open so that people can, so that you can take it any way you like.
Motivation to do what?
Oh, what happened? Lost your mic. Maybe something's happening. We lost your mic. All right, so I'm just gonna show you here on my screen. Up in the middle here, there's a little gear, and when you click on that, you can pick different microphones. It maybe got goofy or something there. Maybe try flipping to a different microphone.
Do you not hear me anymore?
And I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you. Hold on.
And if you can hear me, maybe you just try restarting the chat. Just jump out and jump right back in.
All right, let me.
There you go. And weird stuff like that happens. We have a pretty handy tool here with Google Hangouts. I'm not a big fan of YouTube for most stuff, but their technology is pretty good.
Do you hear me now? Hello?
So I'm going to try doing the same thing. I'll be right back. Okay, is that any better?
Can you hear me?
We've lost the microphone for some reason. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, you can hear me, but I cannot hear you, no.
What about now?
Got a little bit of a technical glitch here. Oh, so Artisan Tony is saying he can hear both of us. There we go. Now I got you.
Oh, you hear me now?
Okay, so I guess I was asking the open-ended question, why? What motivates you to do everything you've done?
So, but when you mean everything I've done, you mean, we talked about why I wrote the book. Are you talking?
I guess when we talk about the book, there's the specifics of the book itself we talked about, but in general, like you talked about getting motivated from your friend that gave you the encouragement to keep going with the publishing. But inside of that, and then we talked about a bit of the gruff you have to deal with online, and then potentially becoming, some level of a figure. public figure, and then all the consequences of that. I guess in the more broad sense of what keeps you driven, do you see some potential? I mean, you must. I'm assuming see some potential, some reason to do this.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, the Second Amendment. It's under heavy barrage right now from not only the left side but even the right. So it's just one of those things that I mean, the Second Amendment's completely under attack, and we need as much ammunition as we can to defend it. And I'm not talking about real ammunition. I'm talking about the advocacy side as well. We need as many people out there who are diving headfirst into making sure that the Second Amendment is not that we don't lead to a second civil war. And to me, that's motivation enough. On I guess a more personal level, being in this industry for a little over 2 years now, I can't imagine myself anywhere else. The people in the firearms industry are hands down the greatest group of people you can ever ask to work with. Yeah, you have your divas out there and stuff like that, but overall, everyone is so open and friendly, and everyone is truly there to make a difference, and that's what I love about it. So I guess on a more selfish note, I need to be around like-minded individuals in the firearms world, and I can't imagine myself going somewhere else where I don't get that anymore.
That's an honest answer, and that's an insight that I don't think I've heard before, because it's true that if someone's interest, if you have a shared interest in guitars or I don't know, food or something, you might find interest in that, but there's not a motivation that we have in what the Second Amendment protects and the reasons why that's important, and the values, I guess, that tie this community together.
Exactly.
So we talked about the books a bit, but in addition to the books, obviously you like you say, you write something, you effort to get it into a book format, and then once it's there, you have to effort to get it out to find people who are its target, and to facilitate that. And then of course the next book and the next book come in line, and books you don't just write a book and 15 minutes later there's a book on the shelves places. Right. So that takes some time, and in the meantime you've done other things. Like you mentioned, have the Instagram. I'll flip back over to my screen share there. I've got an Instagram that's doing pretty decent, and not just a sales. It's not just a bunch of ads. Like some stores will have their just products. I consider you an advocate because you're having a conversation there. You're keeping some interesting stuff out there, challenging people once in a while, having some fun, and keeping people aware, creating a channel of conversation that's useful.
Yeah, one thing I did notice about this industry is there are a lot of people who take themselves way, way too seriously. And not that what we're doing on a day-to-day basis is not serious, but people kind of need to lighten up. So on my page, you have I post just super funny gun memes. I post products from the Pew Pew Jew store. I post like you said, things that get conversation going, news pieces about firearms. It's really a very eclectic taste, if you want to call it that, of everything gun related on my page. So I'm working hard to grow the page, and I'm loving it.
And well, I value a page like this because when the superficial pages, I guess a nice way to say, when you just show the candy, you might attract some views, and you certainly can do something with that. But too often, in order to maintain that type of page or momentum on a page like that, you can't put anything out there that's meat and potatoes or words. It just doesn't flow right. And what that creates is an environment where guns are just candy, and they're exploited. So pages like yours allow people to actually, with some interest in the community or in the industry, to actually dig in and chew on stuff once in a while, and not have the same flavor every day, and not necessarily have everything convenient and tidy. So I like that. You challenge people once in a while, show some stuff that's not necessarily always just lighthearted. So I value pages like that. So thank you for doing that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
It's not the recipe to achieve wealth, and it's not the recipe to achieve views. So it's something I like to acknowledge when people take the effort to resist the easy.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
This is a neat post that I just stumbled across. I hadn't seen this one before, where you have your picture of your book now available on Amazon, and then you've got publisher rejections, 25 plus, book agent rejections, 30 plus, told the book wouldn't reseed 8 times. Times I almost quit, hundreds, tears cried, thousands. Times I fought failure, hundreds. Time it took to get published, 5 years. Moral, never give up, because in America, if you dream it, it can happen. Love it. It's an awesome post.
Thank you. Yeah, all true.
I like this one too. I'm going to go to this one because I've seen this one. Myth, you can suck the venom out of a snake bite. Fact, every gun law is an infringement. I like that one every time I see it. Okay, so we've talked a bit about what you're doing and why. I guess I was in the middle of getting into some of the other stuff you do besides shirts, though, or excuse me, besides books, because you do shirts, and that's a big part of what you're doing in between the books coming out, right?
Yes, I'm a shirt machine. Literally, I just nonstop coming out with shirts. God, I'm coming out with 3 more in the next 2 days. So, yeah, just nonstop shirts, all pro gun, pro Second Amendment stuff. Just a lot of fun. My shirts are just fun, so I love them. So do other people who are buying them. So,
well, I like it, and I'm interested in focusing on stuff like this because it's easy for someone who's just maybe observing with a little casual interest or some kind of scorn or whatever negative, and they'll say, "Oh, this is just a way to make money or whatever." Well, of course, it's a way to make money so that you can effort on the kind of things that we'd like to see people effort on, right? Valuable people effort on important issues. But aside from that, I think, well, I'm a patch guy because I grew up in scouts and military, hanging around police and stuff. So patches were just a thing for me. But shirts is a whole other thing. I mean, shirts are obvious. They've been around forever. The idea of having something witty or insightful, something like this one where it's not just a gun and it's not just something that's going to be aggressive. It's something that you could wear, and if someone took the time to read it, or if you're eating dinner with somebody, they have a chance to actually read it. It makes them think, right? I noticed that other one with the little speak and spell thing. Again, that's kind of just whimsical, but when you look at it, there's gun stuff on there, and it makes you giggle. I think those things are valuable because that's how you create conversations in real life at work and school and church and civic organizations and whatever it is you might be doing in real life, and waiting in line at the grocery store, right? Somebody sees a banana zine and maybe that's an opportunity to have a conversation with somebody.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, all my shirts are just, like I said, fun, Second Amendment related, gun related somehow. Some of them, poke fun at other things. Some are just, just from my own little imagination. So,
now, is it difficult to get shirts up and going? One of the third things we like to talk about on the show, we'll spend the rest of the time maybe chatting about how you do some of the stuff that you've been doing. Was it more difficult to get books published or shirts figured out?
Probably books published. There's a lot more that's involved. I set up a Shopify page, and Shopify, I have to give them credit. Their customer support is absolutely mind-blowingly fantastic. I've never in my life seen anyone that has better customer support than Shopify. And anytime I call them, and I've called them, God, I can't even tell you how many times, but anytime I do talk to them, it's usually maybe a 2-minute wait till I get somebody. But they walk me through how to set up a page, how to do things. And once you get a hang of it, it's very easy to put product up there. I mean, I have mugs. I have, a ton of mugs. You can go to the accessories. You can buy my books. I have some kids stuff. I really have a ton of stuff up there. And the hardest part is just coming up with the, shirt designs. Luckily, I've taught myself how to use Adobe Illustrator, and I'm able to do a majority of my own designs. So that's a lot of fun.
I had that same challenge too, because you can pay someone to do designs, and you can definitely get well-made, well-crafted stuff, but then that adds tremendously to the cost and time and creativity, because then if there's something a little bit different, that might mean time, money, whatever, a delay on something, where when you know how to do it yourself, it's just open, click, 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 and close.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it is. Having a bunch of my first illustrations were I paid for, and it probably dropped about $1,000 over 10 illustrations, and I was like, hey, this is gonna be crazy, because my mind was working faster than my wallet was able to provide. And I mean, I had like 40 shirts lined up that I wanted to do. I'm like, that's $4,000 right there. So I kind of forced myself to learn Adobe Illustrator so that I can do my own designs. And I did. And now, I do my own designs. So it's absolutely fantastic.
Now, I think there's definitely worth in both, and we kind of glossed over, but you can have artists do stuff. I mean, I'm an artist. I'll do stuff for people for money if you give me enough money, right?
Right, of course.
You can get people to do stuff, and there's definitely value in that, especially if you're trying to just, there's lots of reasons why that's super effective. But like we just talked about, doing it yourself is nice. But as you use the tools and learn and create and get familiar, you're going to get your own style. And then that's going to add, I believe it adds to your works, because now it's not, the standard or kind of a plain vanilla or a middle of the road. Now it's yours. And, you'll be able to tell subsequent styles or subsequent designs. This is, coming from Pew Pew Jew.
Right.
I think that's neat. And I think one of the questions that people ask is, how. And so with the stores, there's lots of ways to do. We're not going to get into the nuts and bolts necessarily all the way down to the nuts and bolts, but the idea that you're using a store to do that, and then you've got the Yehuda Remer as a site to talk about the books themselves. So I'm guessing if you need to send a publisher, somebody, a podcaster or somebody, a link to just the books, this is nice and succinct. It's all about the books. And then you've got the store over there branded with the name where people can grab all the shirts and things.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, well, my first website, the YehudaRemer.com, I set up when my book came out. My first book came out as a way that I can promote it and people can check me out. But over the year and a half, a lot of my friends in the industry gave me the moniker, the Pew Pew Jew, and I kind of ran with it. So I had to set up a new store. That's why if you're on the YehudaRemer.com and you click shop, it takes you to the Pew Pew Jew.
Gotcha. So that's maybe a question no one asked, but that's where the name came from. There's just sort of people started, since you were doing gun-related stuff, they stuck.
Yeah, people, gun-related stuff, but it wasn't just that. I'm a very self-deprecating. I have a very self-deprecating sense of humor. So, I was doing all these interviews with people like Cheryl Todd and like you said, riding shotgun with Charlie Cook and Paul Lathrop and like that whole crowd. And, I was just, people were throwing, stuff at me, and just, I'm a Jewish gun owner. So they just started calling me the Pew Pew Jew. And I got the logo designed by my illustrator, my designer who does all my stuff when I need him to, and I just ran with it, and it's been fantastic.
And we had a question from Tony on the YouTube side. He's asking, why did you not self-publish? He's writing a book and may do self-publishing. He's wondering why you held out for a publisher versus the self-publishing.
That is a fantastic question. So I can do self-publishing. The problem is, and first let me state for Tony, this 2 Safety On books were with a publisher. My 10 Little Liberals and the ABCs of Guns and my next 2 books coming out later this year are all 4 of those are self-published through Amazon.
Oh, okay.
Right. The reason why I went with a publisher was I really felt that I needed a little more credence to the book. In retrospect, I didn't, but as a first-time author and not really knowing what I was doing so much, it's, well, you have a book, you go through a publisher. So I went through a publisher. It was not a mistake, but the reason why I went, a different direction with my last 2 books was after building a name for myself. I mean, it's still growing. After building a name, it came to the point where I really, and this might sound selfish, but obviously, I'm in it for me. Sharing profits with somebody else is annoying. So I make more money doing the self-publishing. And now that I have a following and a name for myself within the firearms industry, I would probably only do self-publishing, unless, of course, you have like Penguin or Simon and Schuster. If one of them would come to me, I might be willing to do a publishing deal with them, just because they have the money to provide for all types of marketing versus what I'm doing guerrilla marketing. So it would be nice to have, a little money to back what I'm doing. But in the meantime, I'm growing, I'm doing well, and it's awesome.
So that first time going with the publisher, you were looking for some of the resources and what they can bring to the table as like an ally for you once
exactly. Exactly. And my publisher, White Feather Press, has been fantastic. I mean, luckily my publisher, he himself has written books on firearms, so it ended up being a bit of a blessing going with him, because I was now he was in the firearms industry because he's an author and he gives firearms courses and stuff like that. So I was that was a very big in. I was introduced to a lot of people right off the bat because of him. So I'm obviously forever grateful for him. But as your name grows, you might go in a couple different directions. So that's why I'm going in a different direction with my other books, just because at this point,
well, I'm sure each publisher brings with them resources and abilities, and once you've discovered what those are, and if that's not necessary for your project, then then it's not.
Exactly.
That's what self-publishing is all about, is to give you an ability to get the means of the production without middlemen, because you've already got the engine established. But if you were writing like fiction or something for the first time, or a murder mystery, or romance novel for the first time, competing against every other romance novel and every other mystery book that's ever been written, then a publisher can be immensely useful, I suspect, versus self-publishing, where you've got to tell people, hey, my mystery is the best mystery you've ever heard of. That's everybody says that.
Exactly.
You're in a community now that's much smaller, much more focused, and the books you're creating, you've already established, like you say, channels to get the word out on them to the people that I would assume anybody, a publisher or any marketer, would have difficulty obtaining the specific market that we're looking for with books like yours, where you're already in that community. Like you're established, like you say, you're established in that community. And so you're going to get very little return from a publisher, I suspect.
Exactly, and that's what it is. At this point, I'm dealing with some really big names in the firearms industry. We're talking about some of the top names. When I say firearms industry, I'm also including the advocacy side. So I'm dealing with a lot of very big names within the advocacy world that people would love to meet. And, these are people I'm actually dealing with on a day-to-day basis who are helping me make a name for myself because they believe in what I'm doing. So you can't put, there's no publishing company that'll outwardly call up Dick Heller and say, hey, we have this book we want you to work with. No, that's something that you have to create a relationship on your own.
Right.
So,
if you needed to get in a supermarket or get a banner on a bus in front of just the right trade show or something, that's where a publisher has resources for you.
Right. And look, I hope one day I'll be big enough that I can do that. But until that day, guerrilla marketing it is. I'm
going to click end on the Instagram side because we're coming up on the hour and I'm going to need my phone here for the end of the show. But thanks to everybody on Instagram that joined us. I'm going to jump back over to the Gun Channel side, see if we've got any other questions coming in. One of the questions that we ask quite a bit is, we're going to make it a kosher hot dog for you, but is a kosher hot dog a sandwich?
No, it's a hot dog. I actually had hot dogs for dinner last night in a bun and everything, Yeah,
exactly. If it was a sandwich, it would be called a hot dog sandwich. It's called a hot dog. It's a separate standalone thing. Well said. Well answered. Probably not an appropriate question for the show, but still curious. Can you even carry a gun on Sundays? Well, Sundays isn't a big thing. Saturdays, I would assume. He's talking about in a Jewish culture.
Want to say that again?
Oh, he's asking, can you carry a gun on Saturday, on your holy day?
So there's some people that say no. There are some people that are okay with it. In today's day and age, more and more rabbis are giving their blessings to their congregants to carry on the Sabbath. Not to get into the whole laws of Judaism, but there's reasons why some people say you can't. But because of the rise in anti-Semitism, not just in America but around the world, if you have the ability to carry a firearm, it's something that you must do.
And then thanks for answering that one, because why not? This is Charlie Cook's out there, Riding Shotgun with Charlie, one of my favorite podcasts. You've been on that podcast. Where were you? I think I listened to it, but I don't recall. Where were you guys? Dallas?
Oh, Charlie, yeah. Charlie kind of commandeered my car because I live in Dallas. So he kind of commandeered my car and used it and left me stranded at a hotel for about 4 hours. And all I got from it was he filled up my tank of gas. But besides that, he left me hanging by at the GRPC in Dallas.
Nice. You should have had like a giant poster that said Pew Pew Jew or something stuck in your back.
Pew Pew Jew was not around then. Pew Pew Jew only launched this past September.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm only 6 months old.
So just before gun rights policy last year.
Yeah, 2017.
Well, that's when you were in Dallas in 17, right?
Well, right. We're in 19 now. Last year's GRPC was in Chicago.
Oh, yeah. No, I can say what you're saying. You're saying in 17 it didn't exist. In 18 it happened.
Yeah. In 8, right. And I was on Riding Shotgun in 17.
Okay. So we got that straightened out. So good to see Charlie out there, and thanks for everybody who's joined us. The whole point of the internet is that you use the internet. We're not creating television shows that you watch. We're not creating newspapers that you read. This is an interactive medium like no time ever before. Your ability to interact with the medium is well, it's powerful, and you can do things like thumb up a video, you can like or share a video. The best thing you can do is take the link and share it over to cross platforms, share things on your own blog, create your own content, and share the stuff you find worthy. What you're creating underneath on the other side of the internet, those little tubes and wires and stuff that connect everything, is something that cannot be purchased. So the effort that we can all do towards to help people like Yehuda and Charlie out there, and Artisan Tony and others, is incredible. So that's one of the goals of our show, is to bring people on who are Second Amendment advocates from all over, doing different efforts, and to let them have a chance to explain what they're doing and why and how they're doing it. Thanks again, Yehuda, for joining us. Is there anything, maybe let us know how to contact you, or how, I mean, we talked a bunch about your projects, but if there's anything that you'd like to promote, or let people know how to get in touch with you.
I mean, right now, the best way to get in touch with me is you can either go through the pewpewjew.com. There's a messaging system there, or I'm very active on Instagram. I try to respond as fast as possible. So if anybody wants to follow me on Instagram, send me messages, reach out to me. That's a great way to do it.
Right on. Buy shirts. Keeping people who you value around in the conversation is important going into next year. Yehuda is one of the only people I know of who found it frustrating that we only go once a year to the AmCon, the 2A summit that happens the day before the Gun Rights Policy Conference for the last 2 years. One of my efforts here is to get more people using technology like we have here, except for one little glitch. This was amazing technology. Everyone has access to it, and let's keep a conversation going. As we get into 2020, the more practice we have now, the more networking, the more collaborations we have now, the stronger we're going to be going into 2020, the stronger we are going into 2020. Those political analysts are not paid that much money to be unaware of what we're doing. The stronger we are, the less fight we have, and the more we can work on fall to the other direction. So thanks, Yehuda, for being part of this one, and sharing your projects and everything with us. We'll talk to you again, hopefully soon. I see Charlie out there. I'd like to have you on the show too, so let's get in touch. And I'm going to end it with a friend of ours from Tucson here, Charles Heller, who's OG Second Amendment advocate, and I like to end my shows with his summary.
Guys and gals at gunwebsites.com encourage you to take a CCW class every year, practice at least once a month, and carry every day. Thanks for watching gunwebsites.com.